This week on The Chef's Cut is part 3 of our 3-part series on hospitality. And this week, we have 𝗬𝗵𝗃, who for the past 10 years has risen to the top with his iconic restaurant empire that includes COTE Korean Steakhouse and 𝗂𝗃𝗚𝗚. On this episode, we're asking 𝗬𝗵 about reinventing the steakhouse.
Koreans always had Korean barbecue, but how about we actually created something that is a little more developed?
He's gonna come clean about going through tough times before reaching the top.
Everyone thought that I was rolling, pretty nice, but little did they know I genuinely had less than like $200 in my checking account.
And he tells us about his worst customer experience.
They said, but can a white person open this bottle of wine? And I think that, hit me really hard.
Don't forget to leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Let's bring in 𝗬𝗵𝗃. 𝗬𝗵, you definitely ushered in a new wave of steakhouse, modernizing that concept, but how did you know? It seems so obvious now that Korean barbecue, American steakhouse, that would be a home run. But were you so sure when you started off that was going to resonate with guests?
I mean, I wanted to do this regardless of what was happening of the moment, right? I've been working on this concept for about 9 years before launching, and I wanted to open this at least 5 years earlier than when I opened it, right? So while I really got lucky, right? I would have opened this no matter what or when the time was. It didn't really matter to me because I had a conviction to open up a Korean barbecue restaurant, but we follow the footsteps of like European cuisines. Italians had trattoria and osteria, and then they have developed version which is the ristorante. Frenches have bistros and more developed brasserie. Koreans always had Korean barbecue, but how about we actually created something that is a little more developed, still have the essence of like conviviality of a Korean barbecue, but like wine list, a proper cocktail, martinis and old fashioned and, and ambiance. And I had a conviction that this would work. But when we opened, the headwind was extremely strong, right? Number one, Korean barbecue is where you go after your shift. Chef, you take your guys, drink some beer and like throw it down, a K-Town. That was the essence. That's why you go to Korean barbecue restaurant. So when I was pitching that I wanted to do refined version of it, they're like, bro, like that's almost saying like, this casual thing, it's oxymoron. So it was really difficult to fundraise. But there's another giant headwind, like right now, the steakhouse genre blew up, right? Every single like hottest restaurant in the city is a steakhouse now. But back in 2017, all the old school Sparks and like these old school steakhouses were struggling because the millennials were not eating red meat for environmental reasons, blah, blah, blah. So there was actual trend that red meat consumption was going way down. A steak is of the past, not of the future. And Korean barbecue is of casual and refinement, whereas we did completely opposite of where the trend was. So it was a lot of doubts and a lot of headwinds and questions, but I always had a conviction, I thought this would work and I was obviously biased and, but the conviction was real. So
I think it's one of those things, I feel like in restaurants, especially, hindsight's always 2020 and like, when, COTE burst out of the scene and, I spent 2 years cooking Korean barbecue in Chicago.
No way. I had no idea.
Yeah, I was a
sous
chef
for
Bill Kim at his Korean barbecue restaurant. And I remember when COTE opened, I was like, oh, that's how we should have done it. Like, this is brilliant. It's perfect. You know what I mean? It made so much sense. But it was like, I think like that's the great restaurateurs, you're able to see, and I think it's like you nailed it, the invisible, right? And I think COTE is the invisible. You know what I mean? It was the thing that was so obvious, but nobody could see it. Right. Nobody could see like, this has all the through lines that it makes perfect sense. That, everybody would want this because people love Korean barbecue, people love steakhouses. So if you gave them everything they loved about steakhouse and everything they loved about Korean barbecue, put them together, it's like, of course that's a home run, but it's like nobody could see it. So for you, it's like, when you talk about, COTE, you're like, I knew it right? And that clarity of vision. And like, is that how, when you're looking at new projects, like that's the way you got to feel? Is it like very kind of like gut for you, where you're like, if it's something I can't get out of my head, I need to keep walking down this road? Or is it more mathematical, analytical than that?
Definitely the intuition, right? Definitely the intuition. But Joe, what you just said is so resonates so strongly with me. Ambiguity is killer restaurants, right? And I think I know that firsthand. I had a first restaurant that I opened 2013. It was
Piora.
called 𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗳. Yes, it was an Italian restaurant. You know, every restaurateur's dream, like 32 seats, West Village, Uber fine dining, synchronized drop,
Michelin
like
star?
Michelin star, but it was ambiguous, right? It was a small, refined, creative, sophisticated, like passion-driven restaurant in New York City. I can actually name right now like 50 of those restaurants. Like there's no real reason why you go there as opposed to 50 other quaint, somewhat fine dining, creative places, right? It was ambiguous, right? And I was not Italian. So what I was doing was little more of a fake it until you make it. Uh, and I think closing that restaurant and I had extreme financial struggle while having that restaurant. So imagine like I always like tried to dress nicely. So I had a Michelin star restaurant in West Village and I dressed nice and I was a fairly young guy. So everyone thought that I was rolling, pretty nice. But little did they know, I genuinely had less than like a couple $100 in my checking account, almost to a point where I had to walk out of my friend's bar tabs because I just couldn't pay for it. So I became antisocial and I became this kind of like trapped in my own silo of, seemingly successful, but factually broke, essentially broke. And I think that struggle of few years and fear and ultimately closing down the restaurant with a Michelin star and people loving this restaurant. And I felt this irresponsible and I felt like this kind of ginormous amount of guilt. And I think that's when it crystallized, I'm going to do something that's authentic to who I am, right? Like, and that's why I'm going to do Korean barbecue mixed with American Steakhouse, because if I try to replicate what exists in Korea, in America, I probably wouldn't do a good job because I'm not authentically Korean. Yes, I'm from Korea, but I'm equally as American. So that's why I found that American Steakhouse where I authentically resonated with, and then I put it together where my roots are, it came to and put it together. So it was not an analysis, right? It was not like, oh, people like this, how about we put it together? It was genuinely like, I failed and I had to feel this irresponsibility and guilt and shame of closing a restaurant. And I set out, I'm going to do something, even if I'm going to fail, I'm going to do something that's authentic to who I am
Right.
and have that purpose. And then I'll go down swinging,
Right.
and I think that was COTE. And that's why timing didn't matter. None of this thing really mattered. And like, it was intuitively, this is the conviction. And I think that's how I was able to persevere despite the fact that like, it was really difficult to fundraise. I raised like half the money. I started the construction. So I raised money like in tranches so that if one of those investment didn't come in by the weekend, we wouldn't be able to pay the contractors and it would go bust. And that week after week after week after week, like I was losing sleep, losing weight. I was just kind of dying, but I had that conviction that this needed to exist. And I think that's what gave me the strength to carry on.
And that is so awesome because we talk about how much of our industry is grit. Can you get through it? Can you persevere? Can you keep going, keep your head up, keep fighting, especially when you believe in the concept like that? And then you found another concept that seems the same mix of your American and Korean identities with 𝗂𝗂𝗡. So fried chicken, GIs brought it over to Asia, and Korean fried chicken is delicious. I mean, that's a thing. And that's another part of K-Town that as a cook in New York, we would go out for Korean barbecue, Korean fried chicken, 2 a.m. after a shift. And you took the next concept of that, which is equally American and Korean, and put it into 𝗂𝗂𝗡.
I mean, honestly, launching 𝗂𝗃𝗡 was very difficult because even my closest business partners, I'm talking about like my director of operations, my beverage directors, my partners, who's doing this, I would ask them, real talk, what do you think about this, idea of a fancy fried chicken? And they're like, Simon, I'm going to do whatever you ask me to do. I'm here for the ride. But if you ask me, this shit is not going to work. Like, people do not eat fried chicken before going out. Fried chicken is not a fancy pastime. So this is not going to work, but I'm going to do whatever you ask me to do. So even, and my investors were like, Simon, you can keep opening COTE and create a multi-unit brand, something similar to 𝗵𝗶𝗺. Why are you deviating and creating this high risk of a new product? But I really saw once again, had the conviction, right? Because I love fried chicken. And I love the story. As I was like searching, what is my next item? I thought about 3 different items that I could potentially scale. One was pizza, but I don't like pizza. I don't like carbs, and so pizza is like, I actually don't like pizza. Hot take.
I know, that's damn, Simon. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I'm like, pizza doesn't make me excited. Anyways, hamburger, but hamburger, I felt like other people really did it already, and then fried chicken, I was like, I love fried chicken, and everybody else loves fried chicken too. And when I looked at it, and as a Korean American's perspective, I was like, oh my God, it was the Black American GIs that went to Korea like only 70 years ago. Until then, Koreans didn't even eat fried chicken.
Wow.
Like they boiled it, and so it just made so much sense as a Korean American. I'm very fortunate that people appreciated me for being that kind of bridge, if you will. So I thought that I can now, South Korea has the largest amount of fried chicken restaurant per capita in the world. And they developed this kind of culture. So it only made sense. I'm going to bring it back to America and pepper in Americana, like the coleslaws and, American nostalgia, and put it together. And of course, just with COTE, I work for chefs like Jean-Georges and Thomas Keller, right? Like the French bouginess is something that I really appreciate as well, the haute cuisine element. So chicken nuggets with caviar, black truffle, the largest champagne list in America, and created this really fun space. And I think it's been a really amazing ride so far. And I think the conviction that I found was when I asked one of my mentors, like, how should I carry on? This is really, really tough. And I think he gave me really good insight. He was like, Simon, if you believe, now put yourself out of the picture, right? Forget about you, forget about Simon Kim. Does this high-end Korean steakhouse need to exist without you? Take you out of this equation. If the answer is yes, just keep going. It's going to be you that does it, right? Because if this is bound to happen, why not it be you, right? So I think that really gave me the conviction, because it's definitely going to be me, right? Like and that perseverance, I agree, Adrian. Like, this business is, 9 o'clock, you come to our restaurants, it looks like the hottest place and most lucrative place on earth, but it's not, right? The amount of hard work, and every single shit goes wrong every single day, right? And being able to put it all together and last the slow summers and, call outs and global pandemics and rising prices and shrinking labor forces. It's a real hard job. So I like, one hot take for restaurateurs, aspirationals, bro, like, get out or be ready to like go into this cold water every single day. It's like Navy SEALs going to ice cold water. I bet they never get used to it. This work will not get easier. The sooner you get accustomed to consistent stress and disappointments but a lot of hope and collaborations, that's only when it's going to become better for you, because this job is not going to get better.
Right. It doesn't. It's the old, it never gets easier. You just get better, right? You just get stronger.
Right.
Yeah. You've solved enough problems, and when you see those come up, you know how to solve them a little faster the next time, or you get a new set of problems that you can take lessons from before.
But also, when you do it long enough and do it with a good heart and intention, I feel like you attract fellow people. I think when it gets truly easier is when you have group of people who are like-minded. When they see cold water, they don't like, oh, you're going first, you're going first. No, if you can get a group of people, I'm going in first, even though we all know nobody wants to go in there. I think that is when you create that, you know what, I'll go in first, you know, and now all of a sudden we're all drinking the Kool-Aid. And of course it kind of sucks to go into the cold water, but like we created a culture, right? And I think that's really exhilarating. And I'm very fortunate to have an amazing team like that. Yeah.
You got to make it a foot race to the cold water. You know what I mean? You want to be surrounded by people who are fighting you to get in, where it's like, you all know it's going to hurt. You all know it's going to be brutal, but you need that right group of like absolute lunatics who's like, well, I'm going to go in deeper than you and I'm going to go in before you. And you're just like, all right, we'll see. I'm going to keep swimming out.
Yeah. But at some point, we also need some like a CFOs who are like, Simon, that's probably not a good idea. Like, do I have an EMT ready? You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Does somebody have some heating blankets when we get out?
Exactly.
Financial, you know, having somebody who's a great
to not
accountant.
jump in the cold water. Yeah.
Right. Is there a bridge we can put over the cold water? Somebody have a rowboat?
Right.
Yeah. I'm like,
Simon's like,
great
no,
idea.
charge.
But now the company's grown a little bit, right? So we're talking to more institutionalized kind of entities as well. So I think I'm finding myself as a restaurateur really being able to have those engineer types in the company, so we can actually look at the kind of task a little more with bunch of lunatics, bunch of engineers that can really kind of have those opinions. But I think that what I'm finding the most important at this phase of my career is analysis paralysis is a real thing, right? Whether you're a lunatic, whether you're an engineer, if you have one of group of them, they'll lead a lot easier. But once you have a equally kind of robust group, then it's very difficult to come up who makes that call. And I think that's where restaurateurs really have to be. As a leader, as a person who's all there at the top, I think it's really difficult to make those decisions, which one to follow. And I think that's where intuitions really come into play. At the end of the day, it's not the data. Data helps you, right? My intuition wouldn't follow such a strong data opposite direction, right? Because intuitions are combination of data, combination of gut feeling, combination of bias, all of this like combined. Probably the most sophisticated set of data, in my humble opinion, is human instincts.
Simon, how do you define the role of a restaurateur? What is your role in your group?
I think I'm more of a producer. If I was comparing to like a movie industry, and each film, we have a director who is kind of like executive chef or CDC or general manager or director of operations, right? Where I feel like my role is to really have a good understanding of what's happening in the world and what kind of story we can put together that is authentic to us, but that's relevant to what the market is looking for. And then try to really find perfect people to do that with, and then gathering a bunch of money and being able to put the band together and launching the show, if you will.
Gathering the money is a big part of it.
Yeah, that gathering money part, I think, is one that people glaze over a lot of times. And they're like, oh, yeah, like, you know, I'll just do my own thing. It's like, well, you're also going to need a tremendous amount of money to do this. And it's not the easiest thing to be like, hey, does somebody want to give me a couple $1 million to make the riskiest investment of their life?
Yeah, and couple of $1 million no longer go that far, right? 2026, when we first started off in 2013, things were a little different. But now, building anything and finding people is just getting harder and harder. So it's a interesting time.
Now, Simon, I know a few restaurateurs, and I find that everybody has their thing. Lighting, glassware, everybody has something that they obsess over. What is a detail that you obsess over that other people might not even notice?
I think one of the most important thing that I try to communicate with my team is we as restaurateurs, we as restaurant operators have to see the invisible, right? And I think those are what we really focus on, whether that is temperature, right? Whether that is volume of music, light you can see, but like being able to see the different varying things. How you feel, right? How you feel, and I don't mean that in just hospitality. Like how did someone made you feel? Not like that. It's more like physical, right? The temperature, is it warm? Is it hot? Is it cold? The music, the beats per minute, does it really get you flowing, or is it too fast? I think that's what I really focus on. You know, how do I feel when I'm in this space, eating this food made by this chef? How everything comes together is what I really focus on.
You said one that I haven't heard anyone else bring up, but it's a massive one in temperature. It's like something that people don't think about, but like we all know if the temperature of the room is not right, too hot, too cold, you will see that review the next day. Guaranteed. You know, we went in there, but it was too hot. We went in there and it was too cold. We went in there, you know what I mean? And my porridge was too whatever. But it's like if the
Right.
temperature of the room, and it's hard to do because it's like you're cooking and like, you know, you're in New York, I'm in Chicago. It's like sometimes it just gets super, super cold or super, super hot. And then you have still, you know, a couple hundred people opening and closing a door 1,000 times.
Right.
Right.
And you're trying to like maintain a space. And you're like, oh my God.
I remember reading years ago that like Grant Achatz at Alinea had set the temperature of the room and made sure the water was at a certain temperature so the glasses never showed perspiration. I was like, that was when I started to say like, holy shit, like restaurateurs, like people are noticing details like that because you don't want your glasses to sweat on the wooden table.
Man, I'm just trying to make sure the hoods work.
There you go. But see, but that's the interesting part, right? Like a lot of chefs are hyper focused on like condensation on the glass. Personally, I don't mind the condensation, right? Because as a customer, I don't really care about the condensation, right? It doesn't bother me. But what does bother me is like what I focus on is a little more customers as opposed to an object, right? You know, like when it's people are getting really, really drunk. I believe when temperature is hot, people blood flows faster. You get the feeling of alcohol feels a little more accentuated. If in that case, I want to make sure the temperature is cooled down a little bit. If the room's getting a little too wild up, you want to cool it down a little bit. Physically cooling that room down, the temperature of the room actually slows down this animated movement of our customers. You know, vice versa. When the room is too rigid, you want to increase the temperature of the room. Then they take off their outer layer. Blood is flowing. Drinks are feeling. So you get to really kind of like orchestrate the room. It's not so different than when DJs like pump it up, pump it up, pump it up, and then they drop the thing, right? Like it's not so different. You want to build it up from 5 p.m. like build it up, and like so that there's a real nice pop at like 7 o'clock, and then you build it up, and like 9 o'clock, 9:30, there's a real build up, and like some nights you can carry it to like 11, right? Some nights dies down a little bit. You can't really force feed it, but you can definitely like maestro a little bit, you know. And when it's really, really like slow and stoic, you know, that's when you send like a round of tequila shots to some table that's going to really kind of bring out the fire. And like I think curating that room to me as a restaurateur, you know, I'm very fortunate in that sense. I don't get to spend too much time in the kitchen, but I get to spend time in the hall. So while chefs are focused on, you know, how is my fish cooked or meat cooked, or how the final presentation, I get to worry a lot about like how are my customers like behaving, and how are these food like, impacting our customers, etc.
Now, Simon, when you were opening, was the goal always to become a global brand? Did you always want COTE and 𝗂𝗄𝗏 to be a large global brand, or did you just think that you would open a couple places in New York?
I think I always wanted a big brand. I look up to Chef Nobu a lot. You know, I think Chef Nobu did such an amazing job. And as an Asian restaurateur, how he expanded the brand and how global that is really resonates. I mean, personally, I think I would like to open slightly less amount of number of restaurants compared to, say, Nobu. But like, I'm always constantly drawn to different cultures and places and what have you. And being able to be a restaurateur that gets to travel around the world, and more, we want to adopt those cultures. Like, for example, COTE Miami have ceviche. We want to continuously develop the Latin flavors of Miami, incorporate into COTE. Miami. In Vegas, we have Vegas specific dishes. We have COTE Singapore that also has a COTE Singapore specific dishes. So the idea is we can like continuously move them up into HQ, recipe books and what have you. We can rotate them around, keep things fresh, right? I feel like the next generation, we are looking for something that's constantly evolving, constantly stimulating. We have a very short attention span now, right? Nobody can watch a full movie. They just want shorts. So I feel like we want to really kind of adopt this kind of evolution and have the feeling of something special, but have the feeling of something that's an international brand. So how do we actually capture the brand's quality control and trust to the brand? Meanwhile, capturing the essence of a local restaurant that feels special to be there. How do I find the perfect balance that's commercially successful, but ultimately gives you the feeling of mom and pop restaurant that's rich in soul? That is the biggest question that we always ask.
Yeah, it's not just cookie cutter. It's not like you just took the concept and just cut and paste on another city. I love that it actually reflects the culture of where it is. And it's the same experience. You know what to expect, but it is tailored in a way that shows that you understand the market and you care about where you're opening these places. It's not just imposing the New York menu on Miami. It's taking into consideration what the food culture is there and in Singapore. And you talked about Vegas, and you used to work there earlier in your career. Was that a goal? Like, was that kind of like, I'm bringing it back to Vegas, back where I started as this big brand?
100%. I think Vegas I still have a 702 number. I never changed it after I left Vegas. I wanted to kind of carry that piece of Las Vegas DNA, because ultimately we're all just the accumulation of our past, right? And I think it's so important to embrace that. But if you look at all of my restaurants, Las Vegas DNA has always been in it, right? It's dark. There's neon sign, the light, the music. There's this kind of sense of because in Vegas, when you go out in Vegas, you're not coming from work, right? You actually flew to Vegas to go out, right? So there's this kind of like feeling of people from all over America and somewhat like all over the world coming out and getting ready to go out for the evening, getting ready in their hotel rooms. That feeling is really, really fun and exhilarating. And I think that feeling, we want to capture that, whether we're in New York, whether it is in Miami, whether it is in Las Vegas, that's been in there. So this kind of music, darkness, nightclub life vibe, but make no mistake, we procure the best ingredients, the most amazing wine list, and all those things. It's not, am I fine dining restaurant or fun dining restaurant? We're a fine, fun dining restaurant. It's just that when we went to Vegas, we turned up the volume of fun a lot bigger so that we can like throw it down.
That's true. There's this misconception that 𝗏𝗏𝗃, that they're more about the fun and the show, but it's not style over substance. The substance is just as important. The integrity for the ingredients, the cooking, you all did not win a Michelin star for nothing at 2 of the locations. Like, the food is legit, the care that goes into stuff. And when you walk in, you're like, oh my God, this is going to be so expensive. You look at the menu, there's great bottles of wine at all price points. Was that intentional?
100%, Adrian. I think that's one of our biggest mission. Don't get me wrong. If you want to take COTE for a ride, you can
you can ball out,
break a bank. And I've seen some checks where I'm like, holy smokes. But we're very intentional about our pricing. So our butcher's feast that comes with 4 different types of banchan, 4 different types of meat, including USDA prime beef, American Wagyu, USDA prime dry-aged ribeye, 𝗦𝗶𝗀 that's marinated with a bunch of fruit juices and all these cool chef's touches. A diamond cut, a lot of labor. Comes with 2 different stews, kimchi stew that takes a lot of time and effort to make, doenjang stew, miso stew, bowl of rice and bunch of kimchi and scallion salads. Scallions are not cheap, you know, chef, right? All of this, so 4 different types of meat, as well as a dessert, a soft serve dessert. We want to make sure that our customer can get all of this for a puck, price of a puck of a filet mignon at a pretty decent steakhouse. I'm talking about a puck of filet mignon that does not come with anything. So, because $78 is a really nice 𝗧𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗳𝘀, like a 1 puck. So it's like my favorite thing, because I'm a New Yorker. I came from Korea, but I'm American, and I have a ginormous pride as I wanted to be American. It's not like by default I became an American. You know, this is I love America and I love New York, and I think what New York is when I go to a restaurant, there's an NYU students shooting giggles and having the best time, sitting next to a billionaire who's like popping whatever they're popping, but we're all different but equal, and everybody's having the best time. And I think we don't ever want to lose that, no matter how busy we become and whatnot. And sometimes I've checked myself because I'm a capitalist as well, you know. So
I think one of the things you brought up that I think is really interesting to me is, you know, like Vegas, it's like, you know, when you talk about expanding the brand, it seems obvious, right? Because it's like you had roots there, you know, what you're doing, it seems to make sense. But like as a restaurateur, and I think this is more of a question for me and like where I'm at in my career, it's like, how do you look at a city? Like, you know, because it's like we look at restaurant spaces, right? We've all walked restaurant spaces, we've all walked buildings and been like, okay, how does this feel? What do you look for in a city that says to you, like, this is where COTE needs to be. This is where Coconut needs to be. This is the next city I need to go to. Like, what's your? I would love to know like a little bit about like what's your process like in that.
yeah, honestly, I think it's the biggest thing, once again, intuition, right? When you go spend about a week just going to different restaurants, go sightseeing, and if it vibes with you, you're like, I like it here, I love it here. I think that is the first sign, right? Because at the end of the day, these are your work is, fortunately, unfortunately, direct reflection of who you are, right? So if you jive and vibe well with the city and the people of the city and the restaurants and how this is happening, then it works. If you look at where I'm at, you can clearly tell. I'm in New York, I'm in Miami, I'm in Las Vegas. What is the common denominator of all 3 cities? People love going out, right? It's a vibe of a city, right? Like Las Vegas, New York, Miami. There's common denominator, which is like people, there's high energy, high intensity. People, there's a certain level of a feeling of celebration. So those cities, when I went, I felt those vibes really vibing. So I think those are key things. I think, honestly, data, like median income, average like foot traffic, or like these data, I think is such a blanket numbers because, you know, no matter how big your restaurant is, none of these metrics really matter, right? At the end of the day, all you need is 140 people. You know, there's no like million tourists, 200 million, you know, none of these things are as important as, you know, we're first of its kind, Korean steakhouse. We have this fun conviviality, but also kind of simplicity of item being a steak. So when I looked at Miami, even though there's no Asian cultural reflection there whatsoever, and many people are like, Simon, do not go there because people do not appreciate Asian culture down there. But I went there, I realized like the bunch of Latin culture, they're always thirsty for something different. They love beef. They love going out. This would work. It's the fact that nothing else like this exists clearly paid ginormous of dividend. And now COTE Miami actually superseded New York's number for the first year this year, right? So yeah, so I think when I go to a city, I think it's so important, you know, first, you know, why did you open a restaurant in the first place, Joe?
Because it's, you know, what I love and where I wanted to be.
Exactly, right? Exactly. I think this is what you love. So I feel like when you fall in love with the city, I think that is genuinely so much more important than medium incomes and these metrics. And because we try to put our businessman hat on, but it was always about the love. It was always about the connection with the people and the culture. And I think as long as we stick to that, because we are better at that than any other people. Like when we start analyzing data, let's be real, Joe, you and I are not here on this podcast because we're good data analysts or financial analysts or whatnot, but we can spot where the love is, how do people eat, where the rooms are, right? Like I think celebrating, putting it all together and like through love, like when I feel that at a restaurant, I just go back to that restaurant because the percentage of restaurant that has the level of love and authenticity is, in my humble opinion, less than 10%.
We have a segment that we like to call Walk-In Confessions. And this is where you get to tell us a funny story from early in your career. We know the 𝗬𝗵𝗲 now, who has built these global brands of COTE and 𝗂𝗃𝗃 and Gracious
Mr. Worldwide over here.
Right, like Pitbull.
Yeah.
But who was the 𝗬𝗵𝗲? Like, what was a funny story from earlier in your career where you had to pull a rabbit out of a hat to make it happen, or maybe it didn't work out, but here you are to tell the tale?
I'll share one actually little heavy story. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so this was in Times Square. I was managing a restaurant and the sommelier was busy opening another restaurant. I got called to one table. And I went to the table and I wanted to be good at what I do. So I learned how to present a bottle of wine. So I had a little like serviette behind the label, and then I presented the bottle. And the host basically looked at me and said, without real offensiveness, they said, but can a white person open this bottle of wine? And I think that like hit me really hard. And to date, I'm not really well versed in wine, right? Just because I think that really had a real like augmentation on kind of how my professional brain worked. But that being said, I think that those kind of like earthquake of moments really kind of challenges you, whether do you belong in this industry or not. And then you find the conviction that nobody else will tell me whether I belong in this industry or not. And you kind of find these convictions and you start to appreciate what makes you unstoppable is moments of stops that makes you kind of question, should I stop or not? And then you reignite, you move forward, and you tell yourself nobody else will tell you when to stop or when to go, but you and your team and your partners and your coworkers. And I think that's walk-in confession.
Oh yeah, dude. I that shit where you're just like, I'll keep this chip on my shoulder. Like, yeah, you know what? When you want to say that shit to me, fuck you. Like, you don't want me at your table. I'm gonna start building my own. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's like that's the stuff where it's like, yeah, they could have sent you, man. They could have been it.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, that did send me, right? Like I say it on a hindsight, as you mentioned, Joe, 2020 on a hindsight, I can say this back then, but I was just so embarrassed. I didn't know what to do. I think I was devastated. But ultimately, once again, I want to just share with our industry people, devastation, disappointment, all this hardship is what makes us who we are, right? Like, let's wear it on the sleeve. And I just encourage everyone to find that strength and hope and perseverance, because that is what makes us stronger, not our brilliant ideas and how we can tap dance at a table, making more sales. It is this kind of grit and perseverance.
Yes. And you are embodying that, 𝗬𝗵𝗲. That would have sent me. But as a professional, you held it together and you are stronger and better because of that, and probably even more empathetic with your teams and your guests, and knowing how to help coach them through experiences like that so they don't get discouraged in their careers.
Amen.
Damn. Well,
That's
thank you
awesome.
for sharing that, 𝗬𝗵𝗲. And thank
That's
you
awesome,
so much
𝗬𝗵𝗲. You've been incredible, man. Thank you very much. Me and Age will have to come see you next time I'm in New York and grill up some
And when I'm in
steak,
Chicago,
chop it
I
up.
want some carbonara and 𝗵𝗲𝗂𝗁. So I'll hit you up.
Come on by. I'll see you. I'll see you, Jude. And I'll get you some pasta going before you go out and get on the red carpet.
Let's go.
That is it for this episode of The Chef's Cut. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening, especially if you're watching us on YouTube, where you can find full-length episodes of every show. And be sure to follow us at 𝗪𝗀𝗃 on IG. For Joe Flam, I'm Adrienne Cheatham, and this has been The Chef's Cut, Life Beyond the Pass.